In the days of territory wrestling, it wasn't unusual for the promoter to be his own top star or even the regional champion. But in the World Wrestling Association in Indiana, only one man had the reputation, the outsized personality, the charisma, the audacity, and the ego to name himself the world's heavyweight champion of a league recognized only in the Hoosier State and have the fans believe it. The story of the WWA and wrestling in the state of Indiana over a 25-year period is the story of one man, the world's most dangerous wrestler, Dick the Bruiser. William Frederick Afflis, later Dick to his friends and Bruiser on the football field, was born June 27, 1929 in Delphi, Indiana. The future high school football star's mother was influential in the state Democratic Party, and it would come in handy as Dick got kicked off 4 college football teams. Purdue's for hitting a coach with his helmet before finishing at the University of Nevada at Reno. Making an equally big name as a casino bouncer at the famous Harold's Club, Dick was drafted by the Green Bay Packers in 1951 and played 3 seasons, becoming familiar to Illinois and Wisconsin sports fans. Midwest wrestling promoters sensed a gold mine, and Dick made his pro debut in Nevada in summer 1954. Less than a year later, he was a main event star in the Midwest as Dick the Bruiser. The Bruiser was facing Lou Thez for the NWA title after only 18 months as a pro. In 1957, Bruiser beat Wilbur Snyder for the U.S. title in Chicago's Marigold Arena, the match airing on syndicated TV around the country, putting Bruiser on a level with the top star in the country at the time, Vern Gagne. Soon after, he found his wrestling cousin, Reggie Lasowski, and the Hall of Fame tag team of Bruiser and Crusher was formed. As the 60s progressed, a strange thing happened. The Bruiser became a babyface. Like Stone Cold Steve Austin 35 years later, his aura of realism and invincibility made him an anti-hero, nowhere more than his home state of Indiana, which he and Snyder began promoting in 1964. Dick was still a national and international superstar. His 1967 Tokyo match with Giant Baba was one of the highest-rated TV shows in Japanese history. In 1970, he and Crusher drew 30,000 fans to Chicago's Comiskey Park for their showdown with Mad Dog and Butcher Vachon. He was still the biggest drawing card in St. Louis when he was past 50. His 1982 NWA World Title match with Ric Flair drawing 19,000 fans to the Checker Dome. In Chicago, a 1984 six-man reuniting Bruiser and Crusher drew almost 20,000 to the Rosemont Horizon. The legends about the Bruiser were as big as the crowds he drew, and many were true. The 1957 riot in Madison Square Garden, when he and Jerry Graham faced Rocca and Carpentier, saw 2 policemen injured and a law that kids under 14 couldn't attend matches at the Garden that stood for 20 years. A 1963 Detroit bar brawl / publicity stunt went too far. Between Bruiser and NFL star Alex Karras, it was front page news. Bruiser went to jail and lawsuits were filed in federal court. In Cincinnati, legend has it, he threw a wheelchair at an angry male fan. The chair, unfortunately, was occupied by an elderly woman at the time. But for all his faults, NWA President Sam Muchnick once said of Bruiser, "If I had to walk into a dark alley with a lot of money, I'd want Dick with me." The world's most dangerous wrestler ruled Indiana wrestling from his home in suburban Indianapolis that featured a custom-made 15-foot wide master bed and the only urinal in a private residence in the Hoosier State. His partner Snyder retired to Florida in 1983, and Bruiser joined him a few years later. He died in 1991 at the age of 62, rupturing a blood vessel while bench pressing in his home gym. To this day, anyone who was alive in Indiana between 1955 and 1985 will tell you Dick the Bruiser was the toughest man who ever lived. The WWA lived because of him, and to an extent, died with him. This is the story. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Back to the Territories here from Kayfabe Commentaries. I'm Jim Cornette, and this time the DeLorean was in the shop, needs a new fuel pump, so I got a time-traveling device from Stewie Griffin. And we're going back to the days of the territories. This time we're focusing on the WWA, the World Wrestling Association, the state of Indiana, Dick the Bruiser and Wilbur Snyder's promotion, and we are joined by one of the only people I can think of that can speak intelligently about the glory years of that promotion, a former WWA champion, main event talent, Der Baron, Baron von Raschke.
That's all you need to know. But if you want to talk, go ahead and talk, and I'll answer.
Baron, thank you for being here. And
It's your pleasure.
I gotta ask you, what you can't think about Indianapolis wrestling in the state of Indiana for so many years without talking about Dick the Bruiser. What was Bruiser like as a boss, as a person, as an opponent in the ring?
Well, he was one of the most popular wrestlers of the day, and he was a pretty good boss, and it was a great territory to work because the trips were short.
Yeah.
Wrestlers like that when the trips are short. However, I got involved in working the St. Louis area and Kansas area at the same time, and then we worked for the Dave McKeagney, the Bear Man, up in the Toronto area during some of the summer months. So anyway, between all that, I made a pretty good living, and Dick was a pretty good boss. Yeah.
You know, he was a larger than life figure, but he was partners with Wilbur Snyder, and Wilbur was the more sane, I guess, to the public, the more sane of the two of them. And he was a babyface, career babyface, whereas Bruiser had been a heel for a lot of his life. But Snyder seemed like he was more content to stay in the background. What type of person was he?
Well, yeah, Wilbur was a good partner for Dick because Dick had the ideas and the organizational skills, but Wilbur was a better people man behind the scenes, and you could talk to Wilbur and you get questions. You know, every territory I ever worked in, they always had an office.
Right.
They always had an office, and you get called into the office for this, or you'd go to the office for this, a meeting or something. Bruiser operated out of a garage.
Okay.
So we'd go to the garage, and he'd talk over his business, plans, whatever they were, and they usually worked out pretty good. So.
A lot of people, who was most popular with the boys, Bruiser or Snyder? Was there a difference?
Oh, they were like opposites who worked. Yeah, they were both great in different ways, but I couldn't pick between the two. It was just that Wilbur was so different than Bruiser. Bruiser was more blah, 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 get in your face, and Wilbur was laid back.
March 7th, 1970, you...
Let me go get my book.
...had debuted. You were managed by pretty boy Bobby Heenan, and you beat Dick the Bruiser for the WWA Championship on March 7, 1970.
Beat the snot out of him.
Just saying beat Dick the Bruiser is odd because Bruiser almost never did jobs, but...
It was a job.
How did it happen? Do you remember the match? How many hoops did you and Bobby have to jump through? How many loaded gloves and foreign objects?
That Bobby Heenan never did anything in the matches. He was completely innocent of any treachery or trickery. I don't know why people didn't like the guy, but I think Bruiser slipped on a banana peel and I covered him.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
That sounds like
That's
it. But you had just avoided being Baron von Pumpkin just a couple of years earlier. Mad Dog Vachon tried to give you your name.